Welcome to The Fully Expressed Woman. I'm your host, Maeve Sundstrom. This special event has been lovingly handcrafted for you to reignite desire on your own terms, embody your pleasure, release shame, and embrace your birthright as a sexually clear and confident woman without feeling embarrassed or judged. Our amazing expert speakers and I are here to share with you our most powerful insights and practices to help you heal and freely connect with your sexuality so you can experience the full spectrum of joy, health, and creative expression that was always meant for you to have. I invite you to listen in on each one of these conversations so that you walk away from this event feeling resourced, informed, and empowered to take your own unique next steps toward your most joyful, authentic, and fulfilled sexual self. Check your email each morning for links to the interviews of the day. Any one of these conversations might just change your life, so be sure to tune in. We are so glad you're here. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Dr. Alexandra Stockwell, MD. Known as the Intimacy Doctor, Alexandra Stockwell, MD is an intimate marriage expert who specializes in coaching couples to build beautiful, long-lasting, passionate relationships. She's the best-selling author of Uncompromising Intimacy, host of the Intimate Marriage Podcast, and creator of the Aligned and Hot Marriage Program. For over 20 years, she has shown men and women how to bring pleasure and purpose into all aspects of life, from the daily grind of running a household to intimate communication and ecstatic experiences in the bedroom. A wife of 26 years and a mother of 4, Dr. Alexandra believes the key to passion, fulfillment, intimacy, and success isn't compromise. It's being unwilling to compromise. Because when both people feel free to be themselves, the relationship becomes juicy, nourishing, and deeply satisfying. Dr. Alexandra has been featured in the Huffington Post, Rolling Stone, USA Today, Cosmopolitan, Business Insider, Thrive Global, Mind Body Green, Fox News NYC, and Disruptors Magazine recently named her one of 30 inspiring women to watch in 2022. Dr. Alexandra, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm excited to have you.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I'm especially excited to have you because I'm so curious about your take on intimacy and long-term relationships because, so many of us, myself included, we're taught that the key to successful, lasting relationships is compromise. But you have a different perspective on that. So how did you come to the understanding that you have now? And what does it look like to not compromise in relationships?
Well, let me start just by saying, what I mean by that.
Yeah.
So first of all, yes, throughout certainly the Western world and likely the whole world, the most common relationship advice that is given is that you need to learn to compromise. If you want a good marriage, you have to be good at compromise. And it's something that I say often, and I get screenshots from people who have received that very message on the wedding cards that go with the gifts that they receive when they get married. It's just such a common notion.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, compromise is good if what you want to create is a conflict-free, passion-free, bland, pleasant companionship. In other words, compromise is good for people to stay married and keep women and men doing what society asks of them, creating stability and caring for the children. It's almost, I haven't thought about it this way before, but where women would have been essentially purchased with a dowry, and we don't have any of those material kinds of limitations and restrictions in how women identify and where their worth and desire play into the relationship. But now compromise at a much more mild level serves a similar function. And yet what we yearn for is decades of passion and erotic evolution and deeper connection with our chosen partner. That in the context of creating and living a life together and navigating the challenges and the gratifications personally and professionally, we want to feel alive and vibrant and expressed and certainly intimate in body and soul with our partner. And compromise makes that impossible. So yes, I talk about being uncompromising. The name of my book is Uncompromising Intimacy, but I always want to define that because when people hear the word uncompromise or uncompromising, they often think, oh, you always get your own way. You basically get to be a bully in your relationship, and that will not create the kind of relationship I've just described either.
Right.
I use that word because at the root of compromise is that we hold ourselves back. We either unconsciously or consciously disconnect from our desire, our challenges, our internal experience, our yearnings, our disappointments, so that our partner is more comfortable.
Right. Right.
And when I'm talking about uncompromising intimacy, when I'm talking about prioritizing being uncompromising in your marriage or in your committed relationship, what I'm really talking about is bringing all of who you are to your relationship rather than holding it back so that your partner is comfortable, bringing all of it to your relationship, but learning how to do that so that your partner can receive it. So you're not just like vomiting explosively, kind of, there's a buildup and then the valve opens and out comes all this stuff. There's nothing brutal or judgmental or kind of accusatory in being uncompromising. It's just bringing the truth of who you are, learning to do that. It definitely is a learnable skill so that I don't know that your partner is comfortable, but your partner can lean in and receive it. And together you can essentially up-level the culture of your marriage so that you get to be fully expressed.
Well, and, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about, what is the goal? Is the goal comfort, right? Or is the goal growth? And what you're speaking to is much more about growing together in relationship, growing in our own self-knowledge, self-intimacy, courage in relationship, which really is a way to cultivate more closeness and safety and connection by practicing sharing and being received rather than prioritizing comfort.
Yes, although I don't want to completely discard comfort. I'm really talking about having the ease, the comfort, the stability of knowing one another well, of being relaxed. I am devoted to growth. I think it is one of the foundational values that informs a really hot, beautiful relationship. And there's also this way. So if this is a new concept, then that's really what it's about. But if this is a familiar concept and you are already a personal growth junkie, then I want to also sprinkle in the consideration that part of having an uncompromising, intimate relationship includes enjoying what you have, not always pushing for the next thing, because that's a kind of, addiction in air quotes to always improving and not being satisfied. And so I don't know that the alternative to that exactly is comfort, but I think there's a fine line between prioritizing growth in terms of developing new skills, having new experiences, having additional expression. But sometimes growth looks like slowing down and really enjoying what you actually have, which honestly can be uncomfortable. So I just wanted to add that, trusting that many listeners know all about growth and expansion and pushing to the next level. And there's a kind of entrepreneurial drive, which has its place, but also ends up limiting how much really delicious connection can evolve.
That's a really great point, Alexandra, about, the slowing down and also the learning to feel
savor.
Yes, savor. Exactly. And notice and enjoy what is enough. That's something that I think about a lot is how do we orient to fullness, to feeling full, to feeling like I have enough, instead of the constant striving for more, next, bigger, faster, right? And I'm hearing that in what you're sharing.
Yes, for sure. And sex is such a wonderful adventure, but it's also a wonderful analogy for other elements of relationship. And so just in our conversation right now, I'm thinking about how beautiful it is to just spend whatever a long time is for you. A long time could be 4 minutes, a long time could be 40 minutes of just kissing without always, going for the genital based orgasm. Like that, I'm all for genital based orgasms, but I'm also for really savoring everything that's possible along the way.
Yeah. Well, say a little bit more about that, and we're thinking about cultivating, long lasting passion in relationships, long-term relationships that include desire and sexual fulfillment. How do we get there? That's a big question for so many people, right? Like it just gets lost along the way, and we need more skills for how to live into that reality.
Yeah. Okay. So there are a number of different things that are required. Some I speak about uniquely, and others are spoken about in other places. So one that's spoken about in other places is actually the importance of having conversation with your spouse about sex. There's such interesting research that shows very clearly that couples who talk about the sex that they're having, it's a positive predictor for happiness and longevity for the relationship. But we live in a culture where typically people are more comfortable having sex than they are talking about it, at least with the person they're having it with. So that is that. And then when people want to start talking about it, I actually am about to do a podcast on the Intimate Marriage podcast about how to talk about sex with your spouse, because it's so important. And if it's not something already happening, which is the minority of couples, then it's hard to know where to get started. So that's one element that is backed up by research. Another element, which is backed up by my own personal experience in my marriage of 26 years, and also the hundreds and hundreds, I suppose, thousands of couples that I've coached. And that is that when you're dating or just meeting somebody at a bar and having a one-night stand, then there are all kinds of things that can make for a really awesome sex life that don't work in a long-lasting relationship. Sure, there's familiarity in the long-lasting relationship, but also there's a kind of the sex itself is not enough. And so I like to say that in the context of a long-term relationship, everything which isn't sex functions as foreplay, either bringing you closer together or driving you farther apart. And this can be big distances or micro distances. But if you connect throughout the day in a way that feeds the erotic connection, it is so worthwhile. Now, I don't mean randomly having sex throughout the house at different times of day, but I do mean, for example, when you and your spouse, if one or both of you leave the house to go to work, or even you go to your office to focus, you can just leave, or you can say, hey, honey, I'm heading out now. Or you can go, put your arm around your spouse and give a quick peck on the top of their head or their cheek or even their mouth and move on. But it's like energetically, your attention has already moved on to your work day or the commute or whatever it is that's on your mind, as opposed to it takes an additional 1 to 2 seconds to actually go to your spouse, be present, be grounded, have your soul and your mind be in the same location as your body, and actually let your lips touch in a way that honors that this is the person that you get naked with. Like, it doesn't mean it has to be this like major, sloppy, saliva-filled kiss. Not at all. But there's an intentionality in those micro moments, which goes very, very far. It's like adding seasonings to a meal. You can have the most beautiful food, but you want to add some salt and pepper and some oregano or some cumin, whatever it is that makes the whole thing more delicious and appealing and unique. And so I love the term I've coined, discrete eroticism. And I came to that when I started playing with sitting at the dinner table, and instead of, because we have 4 children, so it's very easy to have my attention on the children and essentially ignore my husband.
Yeah.
I mean, not in a rude way. It's just, that's not where the action is.
There's a lot going on. Yeah.
Right. And he has very full days. He tends to be quieter at meal times than I do, and then the kids do. Or I was aware of looking at him as a wonderful co-parent.
Yeah.
He and I are there together parenting our children. But one day I started playing without saying a thing, without doing anything external, just sitting in my seat at the head of the dining table, looking at him at the head of the other end of the dining table, and looking at him, experiencing him as the hot, attractive man that he is. And I started to feel differently about myself, breathing more deeply. I don't mean audibly, but just like less shallow breath. And this really has been something transformational in my marriage, to not compartmentalize the sexiness, not leave it for the rare occasion we might go out on a date night, or, I mean, I'm all for more frequent dates. It's just with 4 children and just our lives haven't been conducive to that particularly. But like, if you just leave the sexual connection for when the kids are in bed, everything else is taken care of, neither of you have any work to do, the house is in order, the bedroom's
How often
clean.
does that happen?
Right. You've both brushed your teeth, and also you're not about to fall asleep.
Right.
I
Right.
don't want sex to have to wait for that.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I don't mind if sex waits for that, but I don't want a sense of sexiness in the ongoing emotional, sensual intimacy with my husband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. And I think a lot of us struggle with that, especially if we have children, this sense of how do I be both, or I need to not be both. I'm either mom or I'm a lover. And I think what you're describing about allowing both to exist in space is so much more satisfying as a human being, satisfying as a woman to not feel splintered apart in that way, or to feel that, so much of ourselves is lost in mothering. And yeah, really creates much more connection and opportunity for deeper intimacy and more sex.
Exactly. It's a win-win. The only con about it, it's not a true con, is it takes courage, it
Mm,
takes attention, it takes intention. There's a way in which when we manage our lives, we can go into kind of just doing the next thing in order to make it all happen.
hmm
And the kind of internal pivot that you and I are articulating, that's not something that's so easy to put on a to-do list. You can put it
Yes.
on there, but making it happen, it requires more presence. It requires re re-accessing that.
Mm,
When we learn things, that we can see this happen in childhood, and it happens all the way for as long as we're learning things. There's the initial phase where we really have to concentrate and pay attention, and it may not even happen, or maybe it does if it comes more easily. Like, think about learning to walk, or learning to
mhm.
read, or learning to drive, or learning to pay taxes, whatever it is, learning to cook,
Yeah.
and learning another language. Like, we have to concentrate, and then we get into it, and we can feel ourselves learning. And then after some amount of time, this is a very significant and important part of our neurology, that we switch into something becoming automatic.
Right.
And when it's automatic, we don't need to focus our prefrontal cortex on it. We can multitask, we can have a meaningful conversation while driving because it has become automatic.
hmm
And so it's not that, like, I think there's a misconception that people think about, oh, well, if you're with the same partner for so long, then, of course, sexual chemistry wanes, and that's just the nature of sex. No, actually, it is the nature of how human beings learn and interact with things which are new and fresh, and then familiar, and then exceedingly familiar.
hmm
It's just that when driving becomes automatic, it makes our life better. When reading becomes automatic, it makes our life better. When public speaking has an automatic quality, I was hesitant in using that example, but it's not that we become a robot, but there's a way in which it doesn't get our nerves going.
hmm
Like, that is wonderful. But in the realm of sex, when we have mastery, when we know our own and our partner's bodies well, and then the normal thing happens where it can start to become automatic and rote,
hmm
it instantly, or to the same degree, loses everything that's nourishing.
hmm
So we really have to stay present and be intentional. We don't need to constantly learn new positions or have new sexual adventures. I mean, by all means,
Yeah.
that is wonderful, but it's not actually what creates the juiciness in a long-term relationship necessarily. it's the intention and the presence. And sometimes, like, I know this from my clients as well, but I am very careful about confidentiality. So I'll just talk about myself, that my husband and I could be doing something sexual that no one is watching, but if someone were watching, it would look like exactly what we have done for 20 years.
Yeah.
But he might make a micro adjustment inside me because he's fully present and he kind of intuitively perceives something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fully present and responsive and receptive. And suddenly that micro adjustment has taken me into this new realm of ecstasy that I haven't experienced before. And it's not because it's a new kink or we've tried position number, I don't know what, from the Kama Sutra. It's bringing the attention and the presence and the openness that is the antidote to it becoming automatic, which really is the secret sauce. And what that looks like in any given relationship, however many decades in it's going to evolve, well, that's going to be unique to the particular couple.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and it's also the, continuing to bring in the element of eroticism, in the sense of, eroticism in this context. What I mean is just really feeling our sensations, right? Really noticing what is happening. And, as you said, being present to this moment, rather than, how we can kind of check out when we're with a familiar partner or doing a familiar act. Um, we forget to.
Yes, completely. And I love that you're bringing that up, because I realized in the example I gave, it might sound like, oh, my husband's the brilliant one. He's the skillful lover. He made that adjustment. No, I mean, yes, but that is not the whole story.
Right.
In fact, in my free gift, the 9 ways to spice up your love life. I forget it actually in this minute exactly what it's called. But anyway, 9 ways to spice up your relationship. That's what it is. I'm all into love life in this conversation, but it's called 9 ways to spice up your relationship. And the first 3 ways are all about you and what you do for yourself. I don't mean it could mean in how you touch yourself, but it's like self-care is so misunderstood. Yeah, it's great for the self. But when you do self-care, you are in a position to be more present and a much better partner. And then 3 of the ways to spice up your relationship have to do with putting attention on your partner. And then the last 3 ways are attention on the relationship. And the reason that I said that in response to what you said is it's really each individual's job to connect with their own sensuality, to feel the caress, to be aware of where their pleasure is in touching and being touched, to, in the right tone of voice, request an adjustment if something else is going to be more pleasurable, or maybe it turns out it's not, and then you adjust back to what was happening. But yeah, I absolutely want to emphasize that it's not something someone does to you or for you. When things are really spectacular, it can be something you do with one another. But the real key to accessing the kind of erotic energy we're discussing, really, it's something between you and yourself, learning to have your soul feel what's happening in your body and adjusting accordingly.
And that level of presence and awareness and sensation allows for change also, which I think is such an important part of sexuality in general, and you know, sexuality over the lifespan, right? Like we change, we go through different phases and needs and desires and all of that. And true presence is what allows us to meet ourselves and our partners in the now.
Absolutely. And some changes we can choose and some we can't.
Yes.
And to be able to find what's erotic in every scenario, to get super specific, this is what's just coming into my mind right now. Like, I think we have an idea that in order to give and receive sexual pleasure as a woman with a man, that his cock has to be erect.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much pleasure that can be enjoyed with a soft penis for the man to receive it and for the woman to give it. It's a very different conversation to have with your mouth or your hands or any other body part with a soft penis versus a hard one. But when you can enjoy all of it, there's a lot more likelihood that there's going to be more erect penis in your life as well.
Well, and that's just about expanding the possibilities, right? Like reducing the pressure. There's such pressure that so many women, men, couples, everybody feels to, have sex look a certain way, progress a certain way, all of that, that really completely leaves out the individual experience that we're having, going right back to the presence, that you.
Yes. And the thing that makes sex good or not is not exactly what you're doing, it's how it feels.
Yes.
And so another way to say what we're talking about is that if you're not paying attention to how it feels, well, as I hear myself say that, that sounds nutty. Like, of course you are, but there's a way that you can calibrate to how it feels, which guides you to know what's going to feel better versus performance, where it feels more like being goal oriented and having an objective. And what's sacrificed is feeling the experience along the way.
When I think, another piece of this that comes up for particularly women, but probably men too, is, the hesitation or the fear or the concern that in requesting a change, or expressing something new, that feels risky. We're worried about injuring the other person, emotionally, or hurting their feelings, all of that. Or just, we feel exposed. It's a lot to show ourselves, that vulnerably. And yet, that level of intimacy is actually, as you said, sort of the secret sauce. Maybe you could just speak a little bit about that side of building these muscles, building these habits.
Absolutely. And I think we need to start kind of a baseline, which is that typically when we have something we want to do differently, it's because there's something that's unsatisfying that's happening. I mean, if someone is single and imagining dating or dating, then yeah, maybe you're driven by desire. Ooh, I'd like to try this. But typically, and desire definitely is something that arises in long-lasting relationships, of course, but more often the thing that's driving the request or the need for change is because there's dissatisfaction. And the problem is that if, let's say, a woman who has a long-lasting partner says, like, this isn't working for me, we need to do something different, the likelihood that the partner is going to have their feelings hurt is very high. And so the first thing is to really clarify, what is the desire? What is the thing you want to move towards, which you are getting to know because of the complaint, the thing that isn't working? And that's something you figure out before you even have the conversation. And then if these kinds of conversations are not part of your everyday exchanges, I highly recommend that you do not have the conversation just before, during, or just after sex. You want to not have any of that kind of energy and be fully clothed, be in your normal frame of mind. You might not even be in the bedroom, or if that's the only place you can have a private conversation, then be in the bedroom. But the point is, you don't want to be in the sex energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. Second thing is to start with something that you enjoy. Either something you enjoy about the sex, something you enjoy about life with your partner, something that is affirming of the connection and the two of you choosing to live together or make love together. Just you want to say something so that your partner knows, is reminded of your happiness or gladness to be together and can relax. And then you can, as a third thing, meaning the first is don't do it during sex. Second is start with something positive. And the third thing then is to say, I'd love to try something new. Are you open to hearing what it is? You want to give your partner a chance to opt in so it's not all dumped on them. And if you can't think of something that you enjoy in your sex life specifically, another way to do this is, I love how we're raising our children. I appreciate that our financial values are aligned. Obviously, whatever you're going to say has to be true, but like you can point to other areas of life and say, I'd really love for our intimate life to upgrade and be as good as those areas. Is that something you want to? Like you want to give an opportunity for your partner to say yes to the conversation or to the desire. And then once they do, then go ahead and say, I'd like to try just going more slowly. I'd like to try lighting a candle and otherwise having the lights off. I'd like to try listening to different kinds of music and see how that enhances things for us. I'd like to try, whatever it is that strikes your fancy. I'm intentionally starting with relatively simple adjustments because really in everything that I do in coaching individuals and couples, I think it is so important to just honor where you are.
Yes.
And so if where you are is whether you're used to the light being on and you'd like something more romantic, or you're used to having sex in the dark and it feels super edgy to have light on, go ahead and have the first thing you desire be to light a candle and play with the shadows. That is enough. Your first request can be even smaller than that. I don't know exactly what that would be, because as you make requests, again, you develop the skill. It can feel edgy, and then it can feel more comfortable, and then you can make your requests bigger, and it'll be simpler for you and for your partner.
When it gives your partner an opportunity to feel successful, to
Absolutely.
The buy-in, of course, that you spoke about, the consent, and also, to feel successful makes it much easier to make a different kind of change down the road.
Yes. And let's never underestimate the gift to a partner of having a very happy, satisfied woman.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's, I think really, in some ways the gold to all of this. It's like, as we increase intimacy with ourselves, feel into our eroticism and presence and all of that, and, build the skill of making requests, and, all of that serves to deepen who we are and what is available to our relationship and to our partners, which is a really beautiful gift.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Dr. Alexandra. We will have a link to your free gift on the page where this interview is playing, 9 ways to spice up your relationship. I feel like we already got some really wonderful tips and really doable steps just in this conversation too, to help people deepen into that practice. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with us.
It's really my pleasure. And I want to finish off by saying that having a fantastic relationship is a learnable skill. So if you're in a relationship and it's not fantastic, or you're not in a relationship, there are learnable skills. Find a teacher that you want to learn from, because it is learnable.
Yes. Thank you. It's such an important message just in life in general, right? Some of these things can feel so ineffable, and yet, it is. There are skills. There are skills to develop and to learn. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Dr. Alexandra Stockwell, awesome conversation. Thanks so much for being here. And to all of our listeners, thank you for being here. I hope you learned and enjoyed, and I will see you again next time. Thanks for being here with us today, unlocking the path to your fullest sexual health, wellness, and expression. More sessions will be delivered to your inbox tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. And remember, you have access for a full 7 days after each interview is released, or you can get lifetime access plus a private coaching session with me, my body wisdom guided meditation, and your set of affirmations for sexual healing and empowerment by becoming a VIP using the link in any of our daily emails, or by emailing support@redwoodmidwifery.com. I look forward to being here with you again in our next session. And until then, may your deepest desire guide you home.